Our next speaker is the former U.S. Energy Secretary and also U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. He was Governor of New Mexico for 8 years until the beginning of this year. Governor Richardson was also a member of the U.S. House of Representatives for 15 years. He's well known in Europe. It's a great privilege to give the floor to Governor Bill Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. My thanks to Mrs. Rajavi, to all of the organizers of the event. I want to also pay tribute to the European leaders that are here. Obviously, the European Parliament, the EU, have been moving in the right direction. Struan, Dirk, Alejo. By the way, Alejo, I noticed there are a lot of Spaniards here with a great standing ovation you got. You got it because of your actions. I want to talk about first the areas that I think we agree. And I'm going to try to give my perspective as a member of an American former official. I've been governor of New Mexico the last 8 years, so I haven't been totally involved in foreign policy. I've been running a state, but previously I had quite a bit of foreign policy experience. I want to just list the areas, and I think there are 5, where I sense common agreement. Number 1, it does make sense to delist the MEK as being a terrorist organization. This makes no sense. I also want to thank Judge McCasey because I think he's pointed out, at least when it comes to American policy, that there's been mistakes on both sides, on the Republican and the Democratic side. The second point that I believe unites all of us is Camp Ashraf. Obviously, we need to find a solution to avert a humanitarian crisis at Camp Ashraf. And that solution means security, more American security for the UN force that is there. Actually, American security, because right now it seems that Iraq is not providing the necessary protection for the 3,400 human beings that are there. So that is another effort that I believe we can commonly agree. Number 3, I think we need to find ways to support the Iraqi opposition forces in Iran and outside of Iran. I think this has to be the new policy ingredient that a conference like this needs to evaluate and find new arenas, new policies. I don't think we've explored that enough. It is obvious that when I visited with Mrs. Rajavi yesterday, she is a woman of vision. She's a woman of intellect who speaks many languages, who cares deeply about her people, and has a very good team surrounding them. A very good team. Now, what does that mean in terms of a new policy? It means that what happened in Istanbul in the last few days provides an arena for new opportunity and new policies. It is obvious that those that have advocated negotiation, like myself, dialogue, diplomacy, now have to realistically look at the results of that policy. And it is obvious in Istanbul that the Iranian government was not serious. They wouldn't accept a discussion on the fuel cycle and providing a fuel cycle for Iran that the European Union had presented. They refused to look at IAEA procedures to inspect some of the nuclear facilities in Iran. And they set preconditions of eliminating sanctions before we even talked. It was not a serious effort. And I believe this means that new policies need to be looked at. Now, in terms of other steps that we can take, obviously we need to condemn the executions that just took place, push for democratic change in Iran, and by the way, I think we have to stand also with the Russian people in light of the recent tragedy that they had at the Moscow airport. So where are you going to disagree with me? I believe that you have to continue diplomacy and dialogue. Doesn't mean continuing talks that have no success, but it means not abandoning the negotiations that Europe and America and many other countries have participated in, whether at the United Nations, whether in forums like Istanbul. It doesn't mean that you embrace them, but it doesn't mean that you say, okay, this is the end of these discussions. I don't believe that you take a military option off the table, but I don't see that right now as being realistic. The second issue is sanctions. I've heard very little talk about sanctions. I think General Jones articulated them very well. This is the most comprehensive series of sanctions that has ever probably been placed on a country. And the sanctions have been strengthened in the last 2 years because of the strong participation of the European Union and the United States working together. I fail to think why sanctions might not eventually have an effect. 1/2 of Iran's gasoline is imported. A large part of its foodstuffs are imported too. So I believe those sanctions need to be continued, strengthened, retooled, perhaps expand them, as Mrs. Rajavi elucidated in her discussion. My last point is America. America can't do it all. You know, I've noticed all the recommendations. America needs to do this. We need to change here. We can't do it all. In fact, our history in Iran has not been the best, if you recall. But I do believe we have a president that understands the importance of engagement. A president that understands that the world is full of diverse cultures and people, and understands the change comes from the population itself. So I am delighted to be with you. Thank you.
The most powerful speakers this afternoon from the US. I really wish that Baroness Ashton was here. I hope she is listening to what's being said today, because she met the mouthpieces of the Iranian regime in Istanbul, and she knows the pointlessness of trying to negotiate with them. What we've heard from this succession of great speakers today is the only way forward.